This is F.D. Recovery, where we interview addicts and alcoholics.
Our aim is that through this podcast, we might help you on your journey of recovery.
Thank you for listening. Hello, this is Frank with F.D. Recovery. So this portion of the podcast is the weekly intention. So basically how it works is we go week to week, pick a topic and or spiritual principle, and we work it in our weeks. We come back for a recap and so on and so forth. And then we choose another topic and we do that week to week, right? So this week will be wisdom, right? Wisdom is a tricky one, but before we jump into that, let's recap on trauma. So trauma, it translated easy for me, right? The way it worked for me in my week was I started trying to look at my attachments to my situation, life, recovery, what have you, right? What definition I was adding to things and how I was hanging on to stuff, right? The narrative. Because I realized the story that I painted was either that of victimhood or some sort of grandiose capture of whatever the heck I thought was going on, right? It was usually exaggerated and or, I like to paint myself as some victim, right? Because I feel that there is some sort of I don't know how to explain it. There's some sort of like, oh, are you okay? Like you get some attention from victimhood, right? When somebody when somebody comes along and says, oh, poor baby, how are you okay? Kind of gives you that nurturing, and because we're looking for some sort of comfort, right? And it's kind of encoded in us to kind of seek some sort of comfort when we're going through uncomfortable moments, right? I did it with drugs for many years. Sometimes we seek validation through people, places, things, whatever, right? So I noticed with the whole trauma connection, right? I've made peace with a lot of different situations within myself, right? But I do notice that my paranoia comes up from time to time, and that's my I think that's the residual from all the psychosis that I've been in, and I'm doing my best to conquer it, and I have been, right? So it's not like I'm struggling tremendously, but I just realized that paranoia is just, lack of faith, right? When, I was thinking about, a prayer earlier today, and I realized how much faith I didn't have by the things I was asking for, right? I was like, please watch over me, my family. And that right there, just, you assume you're not already being watched over. You assume that, your higher power doesn't already got your back, right? And that's lack of faith on my part. And so see that these were some of the things that I realized on a deep psychological level as far as trauma was disconnecting me from, right? I was so used to the past events happening as far as nothing ever works out, everything goes to shit, and, I've been beat, I've been this, I've been that, all these narratives that I know about life and how it communicates with me and how I communicate with it. And I realized how much I was living out of faith, right? And I realized that I can change the narrative by really sticking to some of these spiritual principles as faith, right? And presumably my prayers are riddled with lack of faith, right? And when I start asking for stuff, or not necessarily asking for stuff, but when I start behaving like it's not already happening, it shows my lack of faith, right? For me, like my practice with faith is just knowing that my higher power is already doing all the things that I selfishly ask for at times, right? If I say, please protect me and my family, it's because I'm feeling fear, right? That disconnects me to faith. But my faith would already know that I already am in the care of my higher power. There is no situation where I have to ask. Right. So I realized the bondage, and that's a pretty deep thought that I was going through earlier. Don't get me wrong, it shouldn't stop us from praying, but it was rooted in fear and lack of faith. And I realized like, oh, okay. So really the prayer should be just, God, align me with your will, right? And that goes back to upon awakening, there's a form of that where, it talks about aligning us to God's will and thy will be done, right? And learning all this stuff and the spiritual process of things like trauma and letting go of some of this stuff, it's not letting go of that, it's letting go and let God, right? Let go and let God. Because what happens is when you start grabbing a hold of that faith, God will steer you to the places and the people that will help you heal that. And um, he already has you, right? It's like the footsteps in the sand. When we look back, there's only one set of footsteps. Because what, God, why did you abandon me? And he says, no, no, I was carrying you the whole time. Those are my footsteps, right? And getting back to that basis of God is never not there for me, and it's only my ego and fear and all these things that thinks that I need this sort of how do I say, when I call upon him, and because I'm so riddled with fear, and it's not necessarily that I need to call upon him. He is already connected to me, right? And that's just another revelation in what I'm going through as far as spiritually. I'm realizing that I don't need to ask for stuff. I just need to ask to be aligned with God's will, and that helps me in the past. Because sometimes if you want, I know with manifestation in God's world, right, what happens is you act as if, and it will be, it already is, right? And so if I'm praying saying, God, please protect me, well, that's already an inclination that I'm telling to the universe that I believe that I'm not protected already if I'm asking for it. So it's just another revelation that I've been realizing on my spiritual journey. So step into faith over fear, right? And that's kind of the revelation that I came through while I was jogging this morning, and realizing how tattered in trauma that I am. All these preconceived notions and all the things that I have learned through the past events has really narrowed my scope on what I believe about the universe and what I believe about people and also myself, and understanding that God has a bigger plan. He has bigger knowledge for me, right? He wants me to live in a world where I'm connected, because that's where I already am. The isolation happens when I start building these invisible walls of fear and hate, and whatever it be, bigotry, prejudice, however you want to spin it, right? We're prejudiced against something, if we're hating on it, right? And getting to these, because I've had to let go a lot of the bigotry within my own heart, not necessarily racism, but I had a lot of self-hate. I had a lot of self-hate towards my culture, because I didn't know if I was white, Mexican. I was, I grew up in a Mexican uh Mexican area with really white skin, getting picked on from other people. You ain't Mexican enough, right? So there was a lot of bigotry in my heart because I just was super confused. And then going through the prison system where everything is based, right? And um, going through, you have to run as a white boy or Mexican or this and that. And it was a really confusing era in my life to, as far as racism and things like that. And getting to this point of where I'm not allowing these head trips to influence my thought and my mind today. And I feel really blessed that I'm on this path where I can start conquering and tackling these things, right? I think we live in a society where nobody wants to talk about the hard stuff. Everybody wants to talk about things that make them feel good, uh, or make them feel superior to other people, right? They don't want to talk about healing stuff. They just want to shame you, right? I'm not trying to live that world today. And I don't judge people for the way they have to relate with reality. It's just today in my life, I choose to have these hard conversations with people I love, and if we get mad, it'll pass, right? We don't have to be bound by our emotions. We don't have to be entrenched in all this negative bias BS that conquers the world. It seems like, today I'm sick of the world trying to act so perfect when we know that that's not the truth, right? Everybody runs around and tries to be social justice warriors and pick on each other for whatever they believe, whether it be political, religious, and we just try to put ourselves above everyone else, like we have moral superiority, or whatever the case is, right? And today I'm trying to pick apart those things in my life where I don't live that way, because the tug of war that happens with people is, it's if I win, then that means you lose. I created a winner and a loser. Don't get me wrong. There is a reality where you have to do better, and you have to go against, especially in the workforce. Sometimes there's competition, right? But I'm talking about on a spiritual level. I could live in the workforce and do what I have to do without causing harm to people. And that's just being me, being honest, being open, and just doing my best. And that's what I did. And that's how I got exactly where I was, as a manager, where I'm working currently. And I didn't have to hurt anybody along the way, but that's not the world we live in. Some people are pretty cutthroat, and some people will harm you just to get ahead. And that's definitely not the reality I want to ascribe to. I'd be a fool if I think everything is, or I'd be silly and naive to behave that everybody's just in this spiritual place that I'm trying to be in. That's not the case. But what I can do is look at things in a positive light, give people the benefit of the doubt, and assume that it's not out of malice, right? I'd rather assume that somebody's just screwing up or made a stupid mistake rather than just uh, coming at me malicious, right? And also learn to decipher. There's some people out there really trying to do harm, right? But how much of it is it coming through your trauma lens? And I think that's super important. For me, I realized the whole painted picture that I do on the canvas every single day is a direct representation of how I feel about my reality within myself. And I think it's super important, right? If we see the world shitty, it's because we got something going on in us that's allowing it to be that shitty. Don't get me wrong. There's heinous stuff that is out of your realm of what you are, and you could interpret it and realize what wrong and right is. But I do believe the way we behave within is how it's gonna behave outwardly. Um, Right. I do believe that on a certain level. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stuff that happens that we're just powerless over. Right. But I do understand that what's going on in my brain, I have the final say on. Right. So taking that agency and moving on to, life to life situations, or day to day situations, is more beneficial for me in the long run, because I can get a better grasp of what reality is, and I don't have to let the trauma paint the picture that it always has. It wants to paint you the bad guy, me the good guy, and I'm in some sort of danger. That's just not the case today, right? Today I can have an open mind and do my best and understand that I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm a human being, and I'm going to make mistakes, and that's okay, right? So I think we're going to let go of the whole trauma, right? And the topic for the day. And I think we'll wrap up with that. Trauma is a tough one. I don't want to belittle anybody's trauma out there, but I do urge you to face it. Face it, or it will face you and put you in a bad way, right? If you don't learn how to do it. With the higher power, man, these steps, they really help you face a lot of crap. Therapy really helps you face a lot. So rise up, guys, because you live once, and you got people that depend on you, and you're worth it. I hope you guys know that. If you're listening, you are worth it. So let's move on to wisdom. Ooh, I like wisdom, right? I hear wisdom and I go, that sounds interesting. So let's see what almighty Google has to say, right? Wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge, experience, and good judgments to make sound decision. It involves insight, discernment, and understanding of complex life situations. Going beyond simply accumulating facts, wisdom can be acquired through reflection, education, and a deep understanding of concepts and truth. Ooh, I like that, right? So, for a long time, I thought, knowledge is power, and, it's half the battle, and blah, blah, blah. Right. I thought getting all this stuff and never using it was going to, acquire to some sort of, you know, some sort of flex. But, you know, getting to this point where I start actually using some of these smart things that I've learned, right? It's like if you take it to the whole other level, right? Because I can sit here and tell you crazy cool facts all day long. I can tell you what gets you point A to point B on a spiritual sense, and how this made that person. Then there's a bunch of studies, right? But if I'm not applying it to my own life, then it's just knowledge, right? So the difference between, let's see, knowledge, wisdom versus knowledge, right? Knowledge is the accumulation of facts and information, while wisdom is the ability to use that knowledge with good judgment, experience, and insight. Think of knowledge as knowing facts, while wisdom is the right application of those facts. For example, knowing the answer to an exam is knowledge, but knowing how to use that knowledge to pass an exam or make a good life decision demonstrates wisdom. All right. So most of the time, I just running around like a smarty pants, and never applying anything I learned, and always just trying to one up everybody, and you know, and I'll put it this way, right? How many times did I make a mistake, or even you, if you want to put it in your personal sense, right? I made so many mistakes over and over, same old shit, right? And they kept telling me, well, you know, the definition of crazy is trying something over and over and expecting different results. And I said, oh yeah, that does sound crazy. Why the fuck would somebody do that? But since I've been in recovery and I found out about this wisdom stuff, right? Okay, knowledge is great and that's all grand, right? We got the knowledge that it doesn't work, right? But imagine I found a new definition of what crazy is. And I've said it in the past and I've said it in meetings. It's finding out what works and doing something else, right? It's like, okay, whoa, once I started thinking about that, like, okay, shit, man, I found what works, and if I do something else, then that's the definition of crazy. Because before I was doing something over and over, never understanding and making that connection, going, what the fuck? Why is this still happening? Boom, 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 pow. Then I would hit that wall again, and I would just never learn anything, right? And I never had any acquired knowledge about what the hell was making it tick, nothing like that. But now I've got to this point, especially in recovery, where I'm like, oh, okay. I found out what works because it kept me sober for almost 2 years, and then I went back and I thought I knew better, and then what I do, I relapsed again. I didn't protect my sobriety, and I started thinking I can know, but I know better. Do kratom, smoking weed, all these different things, all these avenues that we use to for escapism, right? That keeps that monster alive in us, right? I had a guy ask me once, well, why don't you smoke weed? He says, because I do it and I stay on even kill and it works for me. And I said, yeah, you might be right, because I've known people to smoke for 7 years, weed and just weed, and be able to do that, and they have a real successful life, and they even collect chips at AA. That's not my recovery, and I'm not here to judge that. But me, this addict, the way it works for me is once I awaken the beast with any substance at all, what happens is it wakes up and there's no way I'm going to put it to sleep until I have what I need. And then once I get what I need, which is crank, uppers, alcohol, all the hard shit, right? It continues to want more. So one is too many and 1,000 is never enough, right? For this addict, it's not necessarily about the substance, it's about what it wakes up. Right. So as soon as I start participating in this escapism we call, active addiction and alcoholism, what happens is it wakes up something that I cannot put to sleep. I've tried it many different ways. I've been on the methadone program, failed. Kratom program, failed. I've tried Suboxone for a little bit, failed. I've tried, I'll just smoke a little bit of meth, fail. Oh, I think I'll be on Ritalin, fail. Oh, I'll be on a Xanax or Klonopin, fail. Right? I've done it so many different freaking ways, and it's about time that I found the right way and do that, right? Because then what that does is knowing what works and doing something different. That's the true definition of crazy. So today and that's directly correlated with wisdom. Now I know what works, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to apply what works, right? I found all these tools like spiritual principles, humility, honesty, truth, compassion, empathy, all these things that we practice on a daily basis to keep us spiritually sound. I found this, so I'm going to continue to do that, and I'm going to apply the knowledge that I've learned here in the 12 steps, right? And it is a 12-step program, so make no mistake of that. If you're gonna come to AANA and you're not gonna indulge in the 12 steps, I mean, you're gonna make your recovery pretty challenging. And I'm not here to tell anybody how their recovery should go. I can just tell you how mine went, and it wasn't a pretty picture when I would stay away from the steps. Right? I've tried many times to get sober, slipped, fell so many different times. But the closest 2 times I ever got, well, one time I got really close, and the second time I'm now over 7 years clean and sober. Thank God, right? Glory is to God on that. I found my higher power today, and today I walk in faith, and I choose to walk in the light of His Spirit. So today, with the wisdom that is granted to me, because it can be revoked at any moment. I stop doing all these things that I know to keep me spiritually connected with God. It will be revoked, and it won't be revoked because I have this judgmental, evil God, old biblical text. No, I have a God that loves me, and my own selfish isolation will tarnish that connection. He's always there. And I realize that He's always there. It's just my ego and pride allow me to feel disconnected, right? And pull me into that darkness. And it's very scary. And, so getting back to this whole wisdom thing, man, I'm going to keep this pretty short. So, to this week, find out some of the wisdoms in your recovery that's helping you flow. What are you using? What knowledge, what tips, what good judgment from your experience and insights are you pushing forward into your recovery and actually utilizing and being wise, right? Holy smokes. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? When wisdom steps in the picture, we can start deciphering some of these real, big issues in our life where we can go, okay, what's the difference here? Oh, how to know, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? So we take that wisdom and it's best applied. Right? It's not just knowledge. Okay, now I know, that's cool. Okay, what are you going to do about it? That's what wisdom means to me. Okay, now you know, but what are you going to do about it? That's when the rubber hits the road. Wisdom is complete action of knowledge. That's the way it breaks down in my brain. So today, or this week, see what things you can put into practice and use that wisdom, all that knowledge that you've acquired, and use it, and you'll be a very, very wise man or woman this week, right? Obviously, we want humility to enter the picture, so let's let's wait for other people to call us wise, and before we start just, oh, I'm wise. So, but we know we can move wisely, we can move in wisdom, and we can ask for wisdom when we are out of sync with God's will, right? So I'll end with that. And this week, if dig into wisdom and see what that means to you, look it up, see how it best relates to you, and just get in tune with your higher power. Okay, this week is wisdom. I love you guys. This is FD Recovery. Thank you. Peace. Thank you for tuning in to FD Recovery. A reminder, be kind to yourself on this journey of recovery. Also, call your sponsor. Get connected to local support groups. And for one day at a time, stay clean and sober.